I was completely unprepared for this. It's quite incredible. So I'm going to build into that as I go into this video. As you know, this is a vlog or blog or whatever you want to call it. So there's a storytelling process to this. Yesterday's video is vital that you watched. If you have not watched yesterday's video, at the end of this video, I will put a up next box. It'll pop up next to my face. It's important that you watch that. In that video, I was talking about a crisis that happened, well, 30 years of my life. It was in St. Louis, just south of St. Louis, or I guess southwest of St. Louis on Highway 44, a little town called Times Beach. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole story again, but it is absolutely vital that you watch that video, because today's video, it's almost eerie, I guess, is the way to put it. How I was discussing that, and then today it actually happened. In that video, I was talking about dioxin. Times Beach was poisoned by dioxin by accident and by neglect, well, it doesn't matter. And so when I was a kid, in 1971 is when this whole thing started. That's the year I was born. Yes, I know I'm very young. Got it. In the end, it became a state park. So this area where homes and people lived, and next to Six Flags, just west of St. Louis, there was an environmental disaster so bad that people had to leave their homes. But it took years before anybody identified that there was dioxin in their homes. By the 80s, they figured out that dioxin was a problem there. So the federal government came in, moved everybody out. Well, the state government did also. Bought out the homes. In the 90s, they bought an incinerator and set it there. And they took all the soil, I forget how many acres, and burned all that soil to kill the dioxin. So by the 2000s, it was a state park. So if you think about the timeline, it took 30 years for this to clear up. And it really has had an effect on my life, my thought processes about life. I mean, I was raised knowing that a town near me, a town near Six Flags, again, watch the video, was devastated. And it took a good portion of my life for this to be resolved. Now, dioxin is a very dangerous chemical. 1 grain of salt of dioxin, that's all it takes, is the size of a grain of salt to get your lifetime exposure. Vinyl chloride, I'm becoming a chemist after researching all this. Vinyl chloride, when burned, can be turned into dioxin. They used it in Vietnam to kill the plant life, to clear the forest, and a lot of men came home sick. As a matter of fact, I did studies on this a long time ago because of Times Beach. It was something that always had stuck in my mind. The children and grandchildren of men who was exposed to dioxin can be affected by dioxin. They could actually have mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, and several other types of mental disorders as a result of dioxin. It can cause cancer, infertility, it can hurt pregnant women, it can hurt the baby in the pregnant women. In yesterday's video, I was talking about how preppers are beating their chest, talking about how they're going to prepare and they're going to have this device to filter the water and a gas mask. Sure enough, this morning I watched another YouTuber talking about how you're going to prepare, lessons learned for this catastrophe. But even so, in yesterday's video, I was saying you can't prepare for something like this. It's not possible. So then today I learned what's really going on. So there's several videos out there where they're throwing rocks in creeks. And when the rock hits the bottom of the creek, oil substance, this oily rainbowish color substance, bubbles up. So it's showing that it's in the water in these creeks. The congressman for that area, he went down there, did the same thing, said there was dead worms and fish in the creek. Well, one of the things they were burning, they went out there and burned those railroad cars. They burned vinyl chloride. Well, I just told you a few minutes ago, vinyl chloride can become dioxide. They could be producing dioxin. Of course, we don't know because nobody's releasing any of these tests they keep telling us about. We're seeing videos of people wiping off dust from their barbecue pits and different things, showing that this stuff is falling from the sky into a dust. So they're probably wiping off dioxin. Getting back to the preppers, how is it wearing a gas mask Purifying your water is going to save you for this catastrophe. The thing is when we talk about preppers, and I know I'm going to offend people and they're going to comment, preppers don't always think realistically. Preppers think about beating their chest. I'm going to beat nature. And it reminds me of Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump. He's on that fishing boat with Forrest Gump. He's screaming at the hurricane. Oh, do you ever call it? This is all you got? Well, this is what I get from the preppers. This is all you got? Come on, give it to me. And so when they see something could take a big catastrophe, they immediately put on their thinking caps on how they're going to overcome this adversity. Well, you're not going to overcome this adversity. This is a very deadly chemical that has been unleashed on the population. So if you think you're going to put a gas mask on for 30 years and you're going to try to eat, I mean, one guy was telling me, have you ever thought about what you're going to do with your dishes? Remember, all that dust is falling down. You got it in your cabinets. So remember, you got to wash your dishes before you use them. So you're going to wash dishes that have a dioxin on them with water that has dioxin in it. So what's the point in washing it? There is none. If you think you're going to Berkey this water, which is what the guy said, a Berkey. Of course, he talked about reverse osmosis also, but if you think you're going to Berkey it, I looked up the chemicals. Berkey does not remove some of these chemicals. Can't even find some of these chemicals connected to Berkey. Reverse osmosis, you might have a shot. I will admit, reverse osmosis is a very good system, but you're not going to be able to filter enough water to do your dishes and take your baths. It doesn't produce that much water. I had a reverse osmosis, and I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, it was really slow, but something like 1 gallon an hour, maybe 3 gallons an hour. It's not much. What it does is it fills up a tank, like a bladder tank. It's got a bladder in it. And so you get 3 gallons in that bladder. So when you open up your faucet, your reverse osmosis faucet, you're getting whatever's in that tank, 3 gallons. So you're not going to be able to make enough to get a bath or do your dishes. It's going to be strictly for drinking. That's all you can do with it. And I heard this a lot about the Berkey when we were nomads. You know, wanting fresh, clean water. Well, why don't you Berkey the water? Well, my Berkey, I think does 3 gallons an hour. So it's, again, just for drinking water. I don't even use it for coffee. I use regular water for coffee because I'm going to boil it, so any bacteria would be in it would be killed. But the thing about these chemicals, you can't boil the chemicals out. That's not going to happen. If anything, if it's got vinyl chloride in it, it's quite possible, again, I'm not a chemist, but I feel like I became one after studying all this, that you could turn the vinyl chloride into dioxin. What is the solution to this? Well, the first solution is stop beating your chest. If you're a prepper and you feel like you can overcome all these adversities with gas mask and your filtration system and you're going to outsmart the chemicals, give it up. You're not going to be able to outsmart it. You're not going to be able to contain this problem for 30 years. And one couple I was watching, they live 2 miles out of town. They know that the dust is coming down on them. I think they own 14 acres. They just bought it 2 years ago. They got a loan. Well, now they are stuck there. Unless the federal government comes out and bails them out, or insurance bails them out, or somebody bails them out. If you're like me and you want to be self-sustaining, you don't really want the government's help. Of course, insurance is yours. I mean, you could take a bailout from insurance. I don't know if insurance would actually cover this. Now, the corporation, the train company, I would take money from them because they caused the disaster. But I'm not a big fan of taking money from the government because that's like me taking money from my neighbor. It's tax dollars. And I just don't like taking people's money unless it's owed to me. In which case, the train company is definitely liable for that problem. Insurance, I paid into that. That's my money. So I don't have a problem with that kind of stuff. But let's just assume that the train company is found not to be at fault because they really are trying to get out of doing anything about this. They're actually saying it's all safe, don't worry about it. So if they're saying it's safe and you're getting sick, they're not going to help you. They're going to tell you, well, it's something that you've done. It's nothing we did. The thing is I can survive this. I'd probably be the only one that could survive this because nobody in the United States, or at least I should say very few people in the United States, actually think this way. The first step, there's 2 steps to this whole thing. To surviving this, be debt-free. I've told you I'm debt-free. We have a good sized savings account. The only bill that I really have to pay is my income tax. I make YouTube videos. The reason I make money is so I can pay for my truck. Gas, insurance, those kind of things. The truck's paid for. It's paid off. Has been for years now. It's got 80,000 miles on it. If I could figure out a way to get rid of the truck where I don't need the truck, I wouldn't even have to pay taxes because I just quit work. The thing is I have a savings account with enough money that I could do okay for a few months without any money. As a matter of fact, YouTube or Google is being sued. And Carolyn and I was talking about it. What happens if they shut down Google? Well, that's no big deal. I could live without YouTube for a while because we've got a savings account. We're debt free. If I was in East Palestine and I heard dioxin or I heard vinyl chloride was being released into the air, I wouldn't do anything other than get in my truck. I might take my canned foods, might take my freezer, and I would leave. I would go get a hotel for a couple days. I'd bring the freezer in, plug it in so it would run in the hotel room while I'm looking for an apartment or while I'm looking for another piece of property like this one. This one was $4,200. Tiny house was $5,000. So there's $10,000 that I got to have to restart my life. I've always said that I am my own insurance agent. If my house burned down, I would just go out and get a little shed from Home Depot, or I would rebuild what I already have. Well, this is no different. The only difference is I would have to replace my property. Now, I would hope that somebody would eventually reimburse me for my losses, but if not, I'm completely safe. I can live the rest of my life with a short interruption of having to get a new home, a new piece of property, whatever the case is. But if you're trying to live with a gas mask for the next 30 years, that's going to be very inconvenient. I can't even imagine how you are going to eat. You open up a jar of food. We have canned chicken. I open up a can of chicken. I have to figure out how to wash my fork because of the dioxin on it without using water. I got to figure out how to keep my food from getting dioxin in it as it's raining down into my food while I got my gas mask on. I just don't have the brains to figure that out. It's easier for me to leave and start over. So if you click this up next box, it will take you to that video, that very important video about Times Beach. So if I can inspire you to think realistically when you're prepping so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.